On Father's Day, my dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "I wish you'd never been my daughter." I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I set my house keys down on the table between us, quiet as anything, and said, "Then live like you never had one." I walked out, got in the SUV, and drove. 10 minutes down the road, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. His text, "Bring the car back right now or I'm calling the cops." I smiled at the screen. Not a nice smile, and typed back 2 words, "Go ahead." Then I put the phone on silent and kept driving. Here's what my father didn't know. Calling the police wasn't a threat to me. It was the exact trigger I'd spent 6 months waiting for. 45 minutes later, 3 patrol cars surrounded that property. And they weren't there for me. Stick around for this one. Drop the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far it travels. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Grace Moore, 40 years old. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the one holding my family together while nobody bothered to notice. This year, I went all out for Father's Day. Best steakhouse in the city, booked months in advance. His favorite aged bourbon on the table before he even sat down. A custom watch with his initials engraved on the back. I actually picked out 2 before I landed on that one, because the first didn't feel like enough. I wanted, just once, to walk into a room and feel like I was enough. Turns out enough was a currency my father only spent on one person in this family, and it wasn't me. My brother Julian is 28, chronically unemployed, and somehow, still the golden child in every room my father walks into. While I spent the last decade building a career and quietly managing my late mother's estate, Julian spent it maxing out credit cards and calling every failed venture an opportunity, even at the dinner I planned and paid for. Every course, every bottle, every candle on that table. My father's attention never once landed on me. It was locked on Julian's new sports car. A car Julian had no business affording on his own dime. My gift sat by his elbow the entire meal, unopened. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd told myself that for about 15 years running. Then Julian set his fork down, leaned back like he was about to order dessert, and mentioned, casual, easy, like it cost him nothing, that he needed another loan. Rent on his downtown loft. Again. My father didn't even look at Julian when he said it. He looked at me. That's the part that got me, not the ask itself. The way he turned, already certain I'd write the check, the same way I always had. "No," I said. Quiet. Steady. "My bank's closed. For good." 4 words, and I watched my father's whole face rearrange itself into something I didn't recognize. The restaurant had been humming along around us. Silverware, low conversation, someone's birthday, 2 tables over. All of it faded out the second my father decided everyone within earshot needed to hear what he thought of me. He hadn't even opened his mouth yet, and I already knew this dinner wasn't going to end quietly. "You have always been so selfish, Grace." His voice cut through the clinking glasses like he wanted the whole restaurant to hear it, and he got his wish. Heads turned from 2, 3 tables over. He wasn't finished. He looked me dead in the eye, in front of Julian, in front of strangers eating their steak, and said the thing I'd apparently been building toward my entire life. "I wish you'd never been my daughter." The room went quiet in that specific way rooms go quiet when everyone's pretending not to listen. I want to tell you my chest caved in. That's what's supposed to happen, right? 40 years of trying, and your own father says that to your face. But it didn't burn. It went cold instead. Cold and completely clear, like someone had finally handed me the last piece of a puzzle I'd been avoiding for years. I reached into my bag, pulled out the heavy set of keys to his house, set them down next to his half-empty glass, gentle, like I was setting down something breakable. "Then live like you never had one." My voice didn't shake. I picked up my clutch, stood, and walked out into the evening light, leaving him and Julian to stare at a dinner bill I deliberately left unpaid. The SUV was parked right where I'd left it, same one my father drove every day, same one he showed off to the neighbors like it belonged to him. What he'd conveniently forgotten was that the title, the insurance, every loan payment, all of it sat under one name. Mine. I climbed in, adjusted the mirror, and pulled into traffic like it was any other Sunday. 10 minutes down the highway, the text started. 3 missed calls from Julian. Then his. "Bring the car back right now or I'm calling the cops for grand theft auto." I laughed at that one. Grand theft auto. On my own car. I typed back 2 words and set the phone face down on the seat. What my father was about to find out is that he wasn't calling the police on me. He was walking straight into something I'd spent 6 months building, one document at a time. It started 6 months earlier. I was going through the annual filings for my late mother's estate, a tedious task I did every year without expecting to find anything. Mom had built a boutique real estate firm from nothing, and before she passed, she'd set up a trust meant to take care of my father for the rest of his life, with whatever remained split between Julian and me. The numbers didn't add up. Nearly $400,000 had disappeared over 3 years. Unauthorized transfers. Disguised consulting fees that led nowhere real. I dug deeper into the bank records that night, and by 2 a.m, I understood exactly what I was looking at. My father hadn't just been managing his allowance from the trust. He'd been forging my signature on authorization documents. Him and Julian, together, had turned my mother's legacy into a personal ATM. Bankrolling Julian's failed ventures, quietly covering gambling debts, keeping up appearances neither of them could actually afford. I sat with that for a long time before I did anything about it. I could have confronted them right there, thrown the bank statements on the table and demanded answers. Instead, I did something slower. Something I'm still not sure was mercy or just strategy. I took every piece of evidence to a forensic accountant, then an estate attorney. We spent months building a paper trail nobody could argue with. Certified statements, signature analysis, tax filings, property titles. The house. The SUV. All of it, legally, under my name or my exclusive control as sole executor. I sat on that evidence for months, telling myself I was protecting the family. Really, I think I was just scared of what happens after you finally see your father clearly. Then he looked at me across a dinner table and told me he wished I'd never been born his daughter. So instead of driving home that night, I turned the SUV around, headed straight for my mother's old estate, the house my father had been living in like it was his birthright. I parked in the driveway, walked up to the porch, sat down in the rocking chair, and set a leather briefcase on my lap. Then I waited, and I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes. That's all it took before sirens started echoing down the avenue. He'd actually done it. Called 911, told them his estranged daughter had stolen his SUV and was trespassing on his own property. 3 patrol cars pulled up in quick succession, lights washing red and blue across the quiet lawns. 4 officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts, bracing for a hostile car thief. The lead sergeant walked up the driveway first. "Ma'am," he called out, voice sharp. "We got a call about a stolen vehicle and an intruder on private property. I need your hands visible. Step away from the car." I didn't panic, didn't raise my voice. I kept both hands flat on top of the briefcase and spoke the way I'd been trained to speak in rooms with a lot more at stake than a suburban driveway. "Good afternoon, officer. I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. I'm the legal owner of that vehicle, and I'm the sole owner of this property." He frowned, clearly not the reaction he expected. "Ma'am," the caller identified himself as Richard, said he's the homeowner, said you took the SUV without permission. "Richard is my father." I opened the briefcase, slow, deliberate. "And he lied to your dispatcher." I handed him a stack of documents. Vehicle title, registration, insurance. Every one printed with my name, Lieutenant Colonel Grace Moore. Then a second set, the certified grant deed to the house behind us. "This house and this vehicle belong entirely to me, officer. My father lives here on a temporary, unwritten arrangement. One I'm revoking today." That's when a rideshare screeched up behind the patrol cars. My father and Julian practically fell out of the back seat, faces flushed, already grinning like they'd won. "Arrest her!" my father shouted, jabbing a finger at me. "She stole my car! She's trespassing!" The sergeant stepped between us, and something in his posture had changed completely. "Sir, step back. We verified the registration and the deed." My father's face went through about 4 different colors in 3 seconds. And that was before the sergeant told him what filing a false police report actually costs a person. "No, you don't understand." My father's composure was gone. "I'm her father. Her mother meant for this house to be mine. She manipulated the records. My mother left this estate to me as sole executor." I stepped down to the bottom porch step, level with him now. "And for 3 years, you and Julian have been committing fraud, forgery, and trust theft." I pulled the last set of paperwork from my briefcase, the full file from my forensic accountant, and put it directly in the sergeant's hands. This contains certified bank records proving my father forged my signature to embezzle over $400,000 from my mother's estate to pay off my brother's debts. The sergeant flipped through it, page by page, his face getting harder with every one. He waved the other officers closer. "We're going to need a full report on this, sir. Financial crimes at this scale go straight to state investigators." My father turned to Julian, looking for backup, looking for anyone to stand next to him. Julian was already backing toward the rideshare. "Julian, say something." My father's voice cracked on it. "I didn't forge anything," Julian said, hands up, eyes on the sergeant instead of his own father. "He handled all the checks. I didn't know where the money came from. There it was." The betrayal landed right there on the driveway, delivered by the one person my father had wrecked his own life trying to protect. I handed the sergeant one more document. Notarized. Official. 30-day notice to quit. He has 30 days to hand over the keys and vacate my property, or the sheriff removes him. 6 months have passed since that Father's Day evening. Facing real prosecution, my father and Julian signed a settlement. Full restitution, every future claim to my mother's estate signed away for good. Julian lost the loft and finally took a job that pays him for actual work. My father sold what he had left and moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town, with no audience left to perform for. I sold my mother's old estate too. Bought a small cottage near the coast instead, where mornings are quiet and nobody's keeping score. Standing up to my father was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it taught me something worth passing on. Blood doesn't excuse abuse, and a boundary isn't selfish. It's survival. What would you have done in my shoes? Give them another chance. Or hand over the evidence, same as I did. Tell me straight in the comments. If this one got to you, hit like, subscribe, and send it to someone who needs to hear it today.